Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to start factoring. The first thing that we always look for when we are factoring is the greatest common factor. The pirate says keep calm and start factoring. Yes, from now on, whenever we see a polynomial, we immediately think, can I factor this? And the first thing we look for is the greatest common factor. Here's our vocab. The greatest common factor is the highest term that divides evenly into every other term. So we will first think about the numbers and then the letters to discover the greatest common factor. After we do that, we will divide each term by the greatest common factor. This is called undistributing. We're going to create parentheses instead of get rid of them. You can check your work by redistributing to see if you did it correctly. This is undistributing. As I said before, every time we see a polynomial, we're now going to think, what is its greatest common factor? So here we go. If our polynomial is 14x plus 21y, I'm looking at the numbers first. What is the greatest or the biggest number that goes into both 14 and 21? That would be 7. What is the biggest variable that goes into both x and y? Well, there is none, because they're not the same. They don't share anything alike. So to undistribute, I am going to start by writing the 7, and I'm going to divide 14x by 7. 14x divided by 7 is 2x. 21y divided by 7 is positive 3y. And there I have just factored out the greatest common factor, which is 7, from 14x and 21y. Watch it again if you want to. I am now going to look at the two terms at the bottom of the screen. 14x squared minus 21xy squared. What is the greatest common factor? Once again, I look at the numbers first. Greatest common factor of 14 and negative 21 is 7. Greatest common factor of x squared and xy squared is x. So I'm going to factor out x, 7x, from each term. That means 14x squared divided by 7x would be 2x. And negative 21xy squared would be negative 3y squared. Close parentheses. This is how you do the greatest common factor. I divided 7x from each term. Here's your U-try. Again, you want to think about the numbers first and the variables second. And you're thinking about multiplying and dividing. Multiplying and dividing. Okay, here's another example. Factoring out a greatest common factor. What is the greatest common factor of 5x and negative 20x squared? I guess, again, I'm going to look at the numbers first. Greatest common factor of 5 and negative 20 is positive 5. I always like to have the first term inside the parentheses be positive. So I'm going to factor out a positive 5, and then I'm going to look at the variables. This one has x, this one has x squared. What do they have in common? They have x in common. So I can divide each term by 5x. 5x divided by 5x is 1. Make sure you put that 1 there. Negative 20x squared divided by 5x is negative 4x. Close parentheses. I can redistribute to see if I did it correctly. 5x times 1 is 5x. 5x times negative 4x is negative 20x squared. And that's what I started with. Very nice. Greatest common factor. Very powerful tool. Very powerful tool. Whenever we see a polynomial, our first thought is GCF, greatest common factor. It makes our lives easier. Here's your U-try. Factor out the greatest common factor, undistribute. You're going to create parentheses this time. And if you redistribute, you should end up back where you started. Here's U-try 3. I'm not exactly sure why, but it skipped right over the page where I'm going to explain this, so I'm going to add it right here. Here's example 3. 15x cubed plus 45x squared minus 60x. Now I'm looking at all three terms and asking myself, what is the greatest common factor? Again, I'm looking at the numbers first. What's the GCF of 15, 45, and 60? Well, 3 goes into all of them, 5 goes into all of them, but what is the greatest common factor? What is the greatest, the biggest common factor? That would be 15. So I'm going to factor out 15 from all three terms. And then I'm going to look and see, this one has 3 x's, this one has 2, this one has 1. How many x's can I take from each? I can take 1. So I'm going to factor out 15x. I write 15x and start my parentheses. I then divide each term by 15x. 15x cubed divided by 15x is x squared. 45x squared divided by 15x is positive 3x. And negative 60x divided by 15x is negative 4. Close parentheses, and I have factored out 15x, and I've gotten x squared plus 3x minus 4 inside the parentheses. If I distributed, I should end up back where I started. That's GCF, ladies and gentlemen. Your U-try is here. We'll talk about it more in class.